Today, we are tackling a huge question, one that affects our wallets, global politics, and pretty much everything in between. Who is really in charge of the world's oil? Okay, just to kick things off, let's start with a number that is, well, it's almost impossible to wrap your head around. Every single day, the world burns through more than 100 million barrels of oil. It is, quite literally, the fuel that runs our modern world. So that's the scale we're talking about, 100 million barrels every single day. And that begs the real question, doesn't it? When a resource is that important, who's holding the power? Who's really at the controls? To figure this out, we're going to break it down into 4 parts. We'll look at the powerful OPEC cartel, then the massive corporate giants, the tricky world of geopolitics, and finally, we'll ask if the whole game is about to change. All right, first up on our list is a group that holds an incredible amount of power over the global supply. Let's talk about the OPEC cartel and their control over the oil spigot. So you've probably heard the name OPEC thrown around a lot. What does it actually mean? Well, it stands for the Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries. It was started way back in 1960 for one simple reason: to let the major oil-producing nations team up and coordinate how much oil they pump. And we're not talking about small players here. Think about the heavy hitters. Saudi Arabia, Iran, Iraq, Venezuela. These are some of the key members. And together, they are sitting on a gigantic slice of the world's known oil reserves. And their power? It's actually pretty simple, but it's incredibly effective. It's like they have their hands on a giant lever controlling the world's oil supply. When they decide to cut back on production, the supply tightens, and what happens? Prices go up. When they decide to open the taps, more oil flows, and prices go down. Simple as that. Okay, but it gets more complicated. It's not just countries calling the shots. Let's talk about our second group, the corporate oil giants, the true titans of industry. Right, and this is a really important point. The OPEC nations might own the oil that's still buried deep underground, but they're not the only ones in this game, not by a long shot. There are massive corporations that are in charge of actually getting that oil out and moving it around the world. I mean, you know these names, right? We're talking about absolute behemoths like Saudi Aramco. That's the state-owned giant in Saudi Arabia. But also private giants like ExxonMobil and Shell. These are the companies that own the refineries, the pipelines, the supertankers, basically the entire machinery of the oil industry. And just to give you an idea of how big we're talking, get this. The money some of these companies make in a year is more than the entire economic output of many countries. That is a staggering amount of financial power. Okay, so we've got nations and we've got corporations. But there's this whole other layer here, and this is where it gets really complex. Let's talk about the geopolitics of oil, because it is so much more than just a commodity you can buy and sell. You see, here's the thing you have to understand. Oil is never, ever just about fuel. It's a powerful tool in global strategy. It's leverage. Having control over oil gives you a huge amount of influence on the world stage. So how does that actually work? Well, you see it everywhere. Countries use their oil reserves to build alliances with other nations that need energy. It literally defines who trades with whom. And yeah, let's be honest, the desire for oil has also been at the heart of some major conflicts throughout history. And if you want a perfect example, just look at the Persian Gulf. Why is that region so strategically important? One word: oil. It holds so much of the world's reserves that it's become this global hotspot, a place of constant strategic maneuvering. But just when you think you've got this all figured out, there's a huge shift happening, a disruption on the horizon, which brings us to our last piece of the puzzle, our changing energy world. Is this whole game about to get flipped on its head? Yeah. I mean, on one hand, you have the world we all grew up in, right? The world of oil rigs and gas pumps. But on the other hand, look around. You're seeing the future pop up everywhere. Solar panels, giant wind turbines, and more electric cars on the road. Now, hold on, let's be real for a second. This move to renewables, it's happening, for sure. But it's not a light switch. It's not going to happen overnight. Right now, and for the foreseeable future, oil is still the lifeblood of the global economy. So this struggle for control, it is far from over. Okay, so we've looked at the cartels, the giant corporations, the global chess game. Let's bring it all home and finally answer our big question. Who really controls global oil? And the answer might not be what you expect. There isn't one single person or group pulling all the strings. It's not that simple. It's really this incredibly complex, constantly shifting balance of power. Yeah, It's more like a massive global tug of war. You've got powerful nations like the OPEC countries pulling on one end of the rope. Then you've got the massive big oil corporations pulling on the other. And all of that is being constantly shaken up by global markets and politics.
So, why should you care about any of this? Well, because this giant, complicated global power struggle, it all comes down to one thing you see every single day. It's the system that quietly decides the price you pay, right there at the pump.
So I'll leave you with this final thought, a question that's really going to define the next 100 years or so. As we look at this new world of renewable energy, do you think we will ever fully move away from oil?